Good afternoon and welcome to the June 11th edition of Office Hours presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. My name is Dr. Tisa Silver Kennedy, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. Before we get into this program, which is Office Hours, I just want to tell you a bit about the center, our vision, issue a quick disclaimer about the kind of information that we present during office hours, and then get into some updates and then the questions that have come into our community since the last time that we met. So, about the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness, which we call MCFEW for short because I know that name is a mouthful. MCFEW has a vision for all college and career school students in the state of Maryland, and that's that they're able to achieve these 6 pillars of collegiate financial well-being. Those are being creditworthy, ready, resilient, empowered, successful, and thriving. And as usual, I'm not going to read the small print, but if it's a vision that is one that you are interested in learning more about, I encourage you to visit us online at mccfw.org. And if it's a vision that has helped you benefit, please do let us know at mccfw.org/contact. We love to hear those success stories about how people have used information and resources, especially from office hours and other programs, for their personal benefit. So before we get into office hours, I mentioned I have to issue a quick disclaimer. That is that office hours is presented for informational purposes only. The information presented during today's broadcast does not constitute personal, legal, or financial advice. We do our best to provide you with the most up-to-date information, but as you know, things change. And also, beyond the change, every person is different. Your higher ed aspirations or experience is different. Your loan portfolio, your household finances, and other characteristics, all of those circumstances are different. And it's important for you to take those circumstances into account along with, what you hear from your lender and some things in the news before you make any significant decisions about your strategy. So with that being said, I want to give a quick update and then get into the questions that have come in from our community. As for the update, one that has been in the news quite a bit has been the resumption of collections activities on defaulted federal student loans. When you're in default on a federal student loan, that means that you have not made payments for at least 270 days. And after that 270-day period, you become exposed to some really potentially severe consequences. One of those consequences is the seizure of Social Security benefits. However, the Department of Education came out last week, I think on Tuesday, and announced that they have not withheld any Social Security benefits from borrowers in default since they announced that collections activities will resume. And furthermore, they will not pursue Social Security benefits from borrowers who are in default. Now, that announcement did not come with an end date. Not sure, how long this relief is going to be available. However, it's good news for people who are receiving Social Security benefits and have federal student loans that are in default. Now, as for the other collections activity, we have not heard anything to indicate that that activity would stop. So, seizure of Social Security benefits is on hold. Other collections activities are going to continue as they have been. So, good to hear. But again, this is just for Social Security benefit recipients who are in default. Other collections activities are still happening. The other thing I wanted to mention is a special event that I'm having in partnership with the Cash Campaign of Maryland. And that is a webinar on student loan updates, navigating all of these changes. Along with the Cash Campaign of Maryland, the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness will host this webinar on Monday, June the 16th at 6:30 p.m. I will make sure that we drop the registration link in the comments once this video is finished. I think that does it for the update. So I want to go ahead and get into the questions that have come in since our last edition of Office Hours 2 weeks ago. All right, let's take a look at the first question. That is related to public service loan forgiveness. And the question is, will I be able to do a buyback? We have a lot of people that are asking that question right now, since we know now that the month spent during the Save Forbearance can be used to count toward PSLF, but only through the buyback as of today. So let's take a look at the background and get to the answers. For this borrower, the employer status changed on the PSLF help tool. Their employer is now showing as undetermined, and their employment has not been certified. I'm so close and was going to do a buyback, but I can't get my employment verified. What can I do to fix this so I can complete it? And a few more details that are important here. Their payment count is around 86, so they have about 34 months to go. They have not certified their employment since 2022. The eligible months that are in pending status with qualifying employment should be more than 120. So if you are an office mate, as I like to call them, you know that PSLF requires 120 qualifying payments. That means you have to have the employment and the repayment history overlapping. And in this person's situation, now their employer that used to qualify for PSLF is showing up in the system as undetermined. And if the employer is undetermined, if that remains unchanged, they will no longer be able to certify their employment as qualifying for public service loan forgiveness. And we have seen this happen to a few people where their employer did qualify, but now they're showing as undetermined. So when an organization is in a status of eligible, and they've previously been deemed eligible, excuse me, this should say ineligible. If an organization says ineligible or undetermined and they've previously been deemed eligible, then that means that you're going to have to make the case for the organization to be eligible again, unless that display of undetermined is actually a system error. So we're going to go off the assumption that this is not a system error and that the employer has gone from being eligible to being ineligible or undetermined. When you use the PSLF help tool to certify your employment, they'll let you proceed with the application, even if the employer is listed as undetermined. What you'll need to do, though, to help make your case is provide documentation about the organization. What makes it qualify for public service loan forgiveness? The easiest way to qualify for public service loan forgiveness is for the organization to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So if you know that your organization is a 501c3 nonprofit and always has been and has maintained that status, you could provide a copy of their articles of incorporation or the IRS 501c3 determination letter, because the articles of incorporation speak to the organization and how and why it was started. And that IRS 501c3 determination letter shows that documentation was submitted by the organization to the government and the government approved it. Now, keep in mind, an IRS 501c3 status is something that has to be renewed every year by the organization. If your organization has allowed that 501c3 determination to lapse, then it's possible that that's the reason why your employer has gone from being eligible to ineligible or undetermined. But either way, I say submit the paperwork, let the system tell you no, instead of just assuming that the organization will never qualify again. Additional information that you could provide would be a description of the organization's business activities or their services. You can also speak to the clients that are served. We're working with a client right now who's experiencing this very issue where her employer went from being eligible to undetermined. And when we were talking about what the organization does, it's a healthcare office and they provide services to about a population that's 90% using Medicaid. So I advised her, just speak to that, the people that you serve, the work that you do, the way the organization was founded, and the purpose. And any information that you can provide that makes the case for how this organization provides a qualifying service to the general public should make that PSLF application more compelling, and hopefully the status of the employer will go back from ineligible to eligible or from undetermined back to eligible. So just make the case. And again, send in everything you can. Let them tell you no, don't write yourself off. All right, let's go on to the next question. That question is this good? Good is relative. So I'm going to need some details to answer this particular question. Let's take a look at the background and find out what this borrower is talking about. All right, so we have got a trail here of events. Recently, May 26th, this client had a one-on-one student loan strategy session with Team McPhew. It was found that their loan portfolio held FFELP loans and direct loans. They applied for PSLF, they applied for income-driven repayment, and they've already received a PSLF qualifying payment count with all but one of their employers verified. That's really good timing. They also did receive an approval for their IDR payments, and the payment is now going to be $118 per month. So now that I have that background, maybe I can answer whether this is good. All right. The fact that this person has received a payment amount that is using an income driven repayment plan is actually great. And the fact that they just got started on this last month, this is excellent progress because income driven repayment plans qualify for public service loan forgiveness. So that means that going forward, as this person makes this payment of $118 per month on the direct loans, those payments will qualify for public service loan forgiveness as long as the person also maintains that qualifying employment. So just keep in mind the road to PSLF. You reach success once you get to 120 qualifying payments. And what this person has done is they have almost solidified their previous employment. They've got one employer remaining, and they have set themselves up so that they can continue to make progress toward that magic number of 120 because they've got the qualifying employment and they're now enrolled in a qualifying repayment plan. So, is it good? Sounds good to me. All right, let's move on to the next question. That question is, what do I do? I'm trying to make a payment on the Mohila website, but it's down. All right, y'all. News flash, complete transparency. This is me. I still have student loans. And last week, I went to make a payment on my servicer's website. My servicer is Mohila. And when I logged into the website, the login page looked good. All the public information, public facing information of the portal looked good. But when I clicked to log in, the screen just did not look the same. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but you could see kind of like the script of the page or something that would say a box should appear here, but the box didn't look the way that it normally looks. So I'm not sure what was wrong with the website. I tried back later, still couldn't do it. And I imagined that I wasn't the only person who was experiencing this problem. So unsure of why that happened, but we have heard from other people that it has happened. In that case, we urge you to be vigilant. Keep on checking back on the website so that you can, see if it's an intermittent outage, not like something, that's just happening on your end. But I did go back yesterday. I was able to make my payment. And so it looks like things have been restored. I do want to say, though, that in this space that we're in where there are a lot of changes that are going on. Sometimes when you go to studentaid.gov and you're looking to find something, it may not be where you saw it before. There may be options that are not there or are not in the same place. With Mohila, I don't know what happened with this most recent issue. I just know that I wanted to make a payment and I couldn't make a payment, and that frustrated me. And I know that that frustrates other people because we hear a lot about people who are in default, in delinquency, but when you're trying to make a payment and you can't, that can contribute to becoming delinquent. So hopefully this is just something that's not going to happen too often, because for those of us that are making the earnest effort to keep our loans in good standing and make a payment, we need to be able to make a payment. So I'm glad that I was finally able to get that done. All right, let's move on to the next question. And that is, why am I in a forbearance? I have not applied or made any changes since April of 2024. What is going on? All right, let's get the background on this. So this borrower applied for SAVE in April of 2024, and they were approved for SAVE. However, SAVE was paused due to court proceedings, and we're still dealing with that pause. This person had already been enrolled in the standard plan, which is the fixed 10-year plan. They've been making their payments on time each month. They actually have employment now that qualifies for PSLF, but they will not benefit from it. They made a large payment on their loans less than 60 days ago, and their loans are now in a forbearance. And that specific kind of forbearance is a waiting form administrative forbearance. However, the borrower did not request for their account or their student loans to go into a forbearance. So this is a bit puzzling. So since a large payment was made, if the payment was so large that it was very close to the total amount that's due on the account, that may have prompted the servicer to put the loans, the remaining loans, in an administrative forbearance. No, we're just kind of, I don't want to say we're guessing here, but we don't know why that happened. We just know a large payment was made. The borrower did not request a forbearance, so the loans should not have been put into a forbearance from our view, but sure, the servicer has a reason for it. And for that reason, we recommend that you contact the servicer, which in this case happened to be Mohila, and contact them, ask why your account has been moved into forbearance. And if you don't want the account to be in forbearance, tell them that so that they can move the account out of forbearance and get you back on track to being in repayment. All right, let's move on to the next question. That is, can I make multiple payments to get some of these loans forgiven? All right. We get this question a lot about public service loan forgiveness because you can make lump sum payments. However, it will not speed up the clock on progress toward forgiveness. So let's get some more of the background to see if this is the situation that the borrower is referring to. All right, it says, I have loans with different repayment counts and months of forgiveness. Can I make two payments each month for the next 12 months and they equate to 24 payments? And I need until forgiveness. I'm considering several employment options. Not all of them are public or nonprofit, and I would like to have some of my debt removed sooner. We all would like to have that happen. Unfortunately, when it comes to PSLF, you can't do anything to speed it up. It's based on 120 months of both qualifying employment and qualifying repayment history. And if you make a lump sum payment, you're not going to speed up the process. For instance, I had a client maybe 3 years ago who paid his loans at the start of the year. So he made one payment in January that covered the entire year. Now, when he was doing this, he was also looking to benefit from PSLF. But when he made the one payment in January, it counted as one payment for the month of January, even though that payment was large enough to take care of his scheduled payments for January through December of that year. Now, the rules have changed, so you can make a lump sum payment that can cover up to 12 months, but that payment will be applied across the months of employment. So if you make the lump sum payment in January to cover all 12 payments, for that coming year, you would not get credited with qualifying PSLF payments until after that 12th month of employment has gone by. So again, there's nothing that you can do to speed up the process of reaching 120 months of qualifying payments for PSLF. Lump sum payments are allowed, but they will not allow you to get to the finish line of 120 qualifying payments any faster. All right, let's take a look at the next question. That is, I'm switching to ICR, and ICR stands for Income Contingent Repayment. Should I stay in forbearance until my forbearance date is up or begin making payments immediately? All right, let's take a look at a bit more detail from this borrower. I'm in the process of switching to ICR from SAVE. One of the questions asks if I would like to be placed on my new plan immediately and begin making payments right away, or stay in forbearance until my forbearance date ends. My concern is that when you switch to ICR, it says that you'll begin making payments on the interest immediately while the application is processed. I don't want to make payments on just the interest if it's not going to count toward PSLF. I'd rather wait until my application is fully processed and begin making qualifying payments. Is the best way to achieve this by staying in forbearance until October 2025 when my forbearance ends? Wow, that's a great question. So we need a little bit of clarification here. Does the language state that you are going to start making payments or that you are going to start accruing interest again when you switch? Because the SAVE forbearance is one during which interest is not supposed to accrue. And yes, if you do switch to ICR, interest will start to accrue and you'll make your payments. Something that we have seen is that accounts that have been placed into a processing or an administrative forbearance, even when the IDR approval has been communicated. So keep in mind, this situation is one that we've never seen before. We have the SAVE forbearance happening, and during that forbearance, no interest is accruing. We also have the applications for income-driven repayment plans. Basically, the access to them was revoked for months. Now they're back. So it takes a while for the system to start turning again. I don't want to say that it would be a good thing to stay in a forbearance until October 2025, because if that's related to the SAVE litigation and the forbearance continues to go longer and longer, then that just pushes out the time for you. Now, that time can be recaptured for PSLF if you use the buyback feature only after you reach 120 qualifying months. But if your concern is you want to get back on track sooner rather than later, then I would urge you to contact your servicer and just be clear about ICR and when the effective date of you being enrolled in ICR, when that effective date is. So that when you make your next payment, you want to make sure that you're enrolled in ICR when you make it so that it will count toward PSLF if PSLF is the end goal here. All right, let's move to the next question. That question is this what I'm actually getting? All right, well, based on this question, I think we are shifting into the territory of receiving financial aid. So we're looking more at questions from current students instead of borrowers. So this borrower has asked, is this what I'm getting? And this is a screenshot of their estimated federal student aid. You'll see there that there are three different types of aid listed here. The federal Pell Grant, which is a free need-based grant. Then you have federal direct loans, which are funds that are borrowed and have to be paid back. Then there is federal work study. And federal work study is a program where students can get jobs on campus or near campus, and they work and they are paid just like a regular job, except the funding is through the federal work study program. So this student has a snapshot that says they can receive up to $7,395 from the federal Pell Grant program. For federal direct loans, $9,500. And with federal work study, there's no number there, but it says that the student may be eligible. So let's take a look at the answer. You have to remember to read the fine print here. That maximum number for the Pell Grant was $7,395. So that's telling you that you can receive up to $7,395. But how much you actually receive from the Pell Grant depends on your eligibility for aid. That eligibility is determined using information from your FAFSA and one figure that comes off the FAFSA that's called your SAI or your Student Aid Index. There are other factors involved, such as the overall cost of attendance of your school, how many credits you're enrolled in, what the undergraduate loan limits are, and if you've borrowed previously. All of these factors are considered in building for you what's called your financial aid offer. So the screen that this student has shared here has been communicated by the Department of Education. The Department of Education, of course, is responsible for the federal funding piece. So the piece that we're looking at here is just telling the student this is what you could get from the federal government. And this translates, whatever school you go to, if they participate in federal aid programs, this would be what you are eligible to get. How much you actually are eligible to receive will come in a communication from the school, and that will be inside of the student's financial aid offer. So this is great to know, but what's more relevant to this particular student's circumstance is the financial aid offer, and that will come directly from the school. So to this student, I say, please do check with your school, log into your online portal, see what you've been offered, and that's where you can confirm how much out of that $7,395 in eligibility Pell Grant fundings you're actually offered. Same goes for federal direct loans as well as federal work study. All right, let's move to the next question. That is, what are my next steps? Okay, definitely need some background here. So let's take a look at the background from this student. I failed out of most of my classes both semesters last year, which was my first year in college. I received a letter stating that I'm ineligible to return to school and will not be eligible for financial aid. Can I start again when I'm ready? All right, so this depends. We got a clarifying question we need to ask, and that is your letter stating that you didn't meet the requirements of satisfactory academic progress, which is known as SAP or SAP, or are they discussing your academic standing? Failure to meet satisfactory academic progress typically allows for an appeal that you can submit to your school. The financial aid office would be the office that you would submit this appeal to. And that appeal normally requires an explanation. You basically need to provide a statement about what happened that led you to not being able to meet those SAP requirements. Those are your GPA as well as your completion rate. It also requires you to explain what you have put into place or what you've been able to put into place that will promote successful completion of your coursework. Um, Basically, they want to know what happened and they want to know what you're going to do or what has happened to change those circumstances. And you have to provide documentation. Supporting documentation is likely required. And if you're going through this appeals process, you just want to make sure that you make as compelling of a case as possible. And it may require you to get personal. So just be prepared, take some inventory, look at the situation and what contributed to that failure to meet SAP, identify what happened, explain it, and then also explain what measures you've put into place to make sure, or to at least give yourself a better shot of failing to meet SAP again. All right, let's move on to our next question. That is, I saw that new student loan rates were released. I'm a second year student. Do these rates apply to me? Well, I can tell you quickly, if you borrow, yes, these rates will apply to you if you borrow federal student loans. So on May 30th, an announcement went out about interest rates for direct loans that will be dispersed between July 21st of 2025 and June 30th of 2026. Now, the rates that were announced only apply to the 2025 2026 academic year. So when you see these rates for 25 26, this doesn't mean that the interest rates on your loans from 24 25 are going to change. Your loans from the 24 25 year, if you borrowed any, that rate is set. It was set before you borrowed the loans, and that is the rate for the life of the loan as long as you keep it within the federal government. Now, your loans that you may borrow for the 25-26 year have the interest rate that was revealed on May the 30th. That rate is set, it's locked in for the life of these particular loans. For the 2026-2027 year, there'll be another determination of the rate announced before that academic year begins. And once that rate is set, that is the rate for the life of those loans borrowed in the 26-27 year. So every year, interest rates are set for new loans that are issued in that particular year. And annually, those new interest rates are announced before June. All right, let's take a look at our next question. I believe this is our last question. It is, I changed my mind. Can I take FAFSA with me to the new school? This is a great question, and it's also a common question. Let's take a look at the background here. All right. Says I got accepted to and committed to a 4-year private college, and I accepted my FAFSA loans through that school. Now I've decided to withdraw my acceptance and go to a community college instead, and then transfer to another school. Questions: would I be able to transfer my funds to my new school? Or do I have to pay this loan back and request a new one for the community college? Did I just sacrifice a semester of student aid that I won't be able to get back, even though I received no education with those funds? All right. I just want to send to the student a big woosah. All right. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to change your mind before you start school. And even if you get in school and find that this isn't the school for you, it's okay to change your mind then. Now, there might be some things that you have to work through depending on when you change your mind, but the fact that you change your mind is okay and you can get through that. Now, in this particular situation, you've never attended the 4-year school, you haven't taken any classes, so the funds should not have been dispersed. Just because you accepted the loans doesn't mean that the school has completed, all of their regulatory requirements to actually get the funds dispersed to the school, and whatever refund there may have been distributed to you. So if you've never attended, then the loans should not have dispersed. And if they were going to disperse, you would have had to do things like complete a master promissory note, entrance counseling. There are lots of steps that have to happen before funds actually move from the federal government. So what you do want to make sure that you've done is to notify admissions or the registrar of the school that you first chose, because they're expecting you. And once you tell them that you're no longer coming, they'll be able to direct you through the process of rescinding your interest in attending. Now, it is a process. There are multiple departments that have to be notified. And once you go through that process, they should they'll loop in financial aid, and financial aid will be able to cancel your award. And every piece of aid, if you had any scholarships, grants, work study, and the loans that you accepted at the school, all of that would be declined, so it would no longer be able to come to you through that school. But your federal student aid options, if you had a Pell Grant, student loans, federal work study, that's federal eligibility, and those federal funding options are available to you even if you attend another school. But what will have to happen is this process will kind of reset. You'll go back to the phase where the school will now have to send you an offer letter, and that offer letter will contain the types of financial aid that you're eligible for. That offer letter is going to be different from the offer letter that you receive from the four-year private institution. A big difference will likely be the overall cost of attendance, because a community college, I'm pretty sure that the community college is going to be much less expensive than the four-year private institution. So you may not be offered the same amount of aid because the cost is going to be so much cheaper. However, your out-of-pocket costs will probably be significantly less because of those differences in cost of attendance. But again, take a look at that new financial aid offer letter from the community college that will let you know the types of aid that have been extended to you. And then you can decide how much of that aid you need to accept based on the cost of attendance at your new and likely significantly cheaper school. So best wishes and much success to you. All right. So that was our last question. I don't see any questions that have come in the comments. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare to wrap up this episode with a resource for Marylanders, and that is the Student Loan Ombudsman. The state of Maryland is a state that has a dedicated student loan ombudsman that's housed in the state's Department of Labor. The Student Loan Ombudsman is a party that it would be helpful for you to loop in if you've been experiencing issues with your servicer and you have, reached out to the servicer, tried to solve the problem or resolve the issue in good faith, and things just aren't, don't seem to be moving. So the types of problems that the Student Loan Ombudsman can assist you with may include failure by the servicer to communicate with you as the borrower, errors in crediting your payments toward principal and interest, misapplying your payments, inaccurate interest rate calculations, billing errors, loan consolidation or modification errors, and or inappropriate collection activity or tactics. So there are a bunch of issues that the Student Loan Ombudsman can be helpful with assisting you with. It's just that you want to make sure that you reach out to your servicer first. Try to resolve it there. And if you can't get anywhere, that's when you are kind of bringing this extra layer of self-advocacy that can be provided by the state of Maryland Student Loan Ombudsman. And you can reach out to the Student Loan Ombudsman's office online through the state's Department of Labor. And you can submit your complaint online. That may lead to the opening of an investigation. But the key is explore with your servicer first. And if you don't have resolution, make sure that you reach out to the Student Loan Ombudsman. All right. That does it for this edition of Office Hours presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. My name is Dr. Tisa Silver Kennedy. I thank you so much for joining me for Office Hours. We usually do this twice per month on Wednesdays at noon to take your questions about student loan repayment and paying for higher education. You can reach out to us online at mccfw.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. We are at the MCCFW, or YouTube. We are at the MCCFW, and it's always nice when we see people like the content and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm going to check the comments just one more time to see if there's anything out there. And I'll check my phone just for a double check. I don't see anything. So hopefully I have answered all of your questions. And if you do have a question that comes up after the broadcast, please do visit us online at mccfw.org/contact, or feel free to reach out to us, tag us on any of those social media channels. We are at the MCCFW, and we will more than likely add your question to the next edition of Office Hours. So in light of the fact that we don't have any comments or questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this episode up. Thank you again for joining me for another edition of Office Hours. Until next time, as always, be well. Bye-bye.